Scott Brown here. It's been 2 years since I've had the Makita 40V platform. I thought I'd do a little video about all the 40V tools that I have and tell you my experience with them so far. Alright, let's start at the other end with the Makita 40V saws. I think these are some of the best things that the 40V system is good for. This is a blade the same size as my Capex blade, my drop saw blade, and it's on a circular saw. That means it can cut 95mm deep, which is crazy. I can cut right through a fence post. Because it's such a deep blade and it's such a big saw, I don't use it as often as I thought I would, but I think I'm going to be using it a lot more soon because we're building a deck, building a fence, so we might see a bit more of that. Now, one thing that's going to come up a lot in this 40V system is this here. See that? That's a Bluetooth chip thing. I believe that's the technical term for it. That's for dust extraction, but we can talk about that soon. Let's move on to the drop saw. So the drop saw, this is my daily drop saw when I was on site. Now we're based at home, so I get to use the Capex a lot more often, but if I'm cutting at the front of the house, I grab this. The great benefit of it is how light it is. It's only, I think, 16 kilograms. It's a smaller saw to carry and the blade's smaller, but despite that, because it can come out so far, you can still get some good depth. I think it's something like 300 deep by 70mm high. If I'm wrong, I'll put a text box here. Another thing that the drop saw has on it is that Bluetooth chip again. And what that means is once the chip is in there and the chip is in the vacuum, you pull this trigger, the vacuum turns on. But it's also got a handy little button here for turning the vacuum on without pulling the blade, which is super handy. I used to have the DeWalt miter saw, the big chunky one. That was my favorite miter saw. Over time the accuracy got out, so I upgraded to a Capex, a Festool Capex, and then I wanted a more daily drop saw that I could cut up treated timber and all that kind of stuff with. So that's where this fits in. Most of the drop saw work I do with this, and then when I want to do finishing, I get the Festool out. This is my first Makita 40V saw. This is the 185mm, which I think is 8.5 inch. It has this side-on battery, which is super cool. Look at that, low profile. Still a heavy saw, but it's good for ripping stuff. Like, I never feel like this is underpowered. You can rip wet timber, you can rip all day. So the main ways that I use this is when I'm just cutting 6x2, 4x2, if I don't want to set up a drop saw. It can get quite heavy. That's probably its biggest drawback. If you're cutting all day and you don't need the full 65mm depth, I would recommend this saw. This one here. This is my newest addition. It actually gives me a chance here. I need to explain that most of these tools were given to me by Makita New Zealand. So I'll pop the word add gifted. I probably already have at the start of the video. If not, I'll put it here again. Most of these tools were gifted, with this one being an exception. While I was double glazing my timber windows here, I found this to be quite cumbersome because you're sort of trying to balance it over like a 50mm timber frame, which can get a bit treacherous. The only option I could find was one of these, but the catch was they don't sell them in New Zealand. This, and I think the other left blade one is the only 40V circular saws that Makita New Zealand provide, but Makita Japan sell these little guys on eBay. So I spent $600 odd on this, got it sent over. It has the Bluetooth chip there as well, and it can cut 45mm, it can cut through a 4x2. You just unscrew this, you put it on the ground for a little while, and then look, you can make that blade go right up to a wall. Great little saw. Last on the circular blade saws is the Makita 40V track saw. I'm a big track saw fan in general. I had the corded one forever, and we cut everything with that. We made cabinets and everything. It was crazy. So when this came out, I was super keen to get a hold of it. I held off getting a cordless track saw because the previous Makita one was the 36V. I'm not a big fan of the two batteries, like two 18V batteries to power one tool. That means you need 4 18V batteries if you're going to be using a tool. And then you get a vacuum involved and it's too much. So when this one came out and only required one battery, well, I hit up Makita and I said, can I please have one? I've got a video on this if you want some more in-depth detail, but I have had no problems with it. We'll come back to the vacuum soon, but moving over. The Makita 40V hedge trimmer. If you're a builder, you might not be interested, but because it's here and because it's powered by a 40 volt battery, I might as well say a few things, right? One little thing to show you that I really don't know much about huge trimmers. I had this for about 3 months before I realized I could do this. Look at that. So if you're cutting like that, you can just turn the handle. I was going like this. What an idiot. The first thing I got from Makita, the first 40 volt tool I got was the drill, and it came in this box here. It came with a charger, this charger here. It came with an adapter, this one here. Now what that lets you do is it lets you charge 18 volt batteries on the 40 volt charger, which I've never done. But the tool that was in here wasn't this. This is the oldest Makita tool I own. See this? It's a jigsaw, it was my dad's jigsaw, he gave it to me. Made in Japan. Look at that, it's got the old label. My dad bought this in the 80s, so it's corded, not cordless. Inside the box here it's got this holder. It's got a couple of places for batteries. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I'm a fan of sustainers in general, not these ones in particular. I prefer the T-lock ones. I set up my van to hold these, like I've got drawers in the back that are built specifically to hold these sustainers. I used to have all my tools set up in them, and then I would bring them all onto site, but since I've been working on my own house, tools have just been spread around the property. Another thing, when I use the drills, I do not use batteries like this. You can probably imagine why. That is a Makita 40 volt 8 amp hour battery. I just did this for the intro. Look at the size of it. When I'm using drills, including that drill driver that we just looked at, I put the 2.5 amp hour. I can go all day, sometimes a week of sort of intermittent use on a renovation without charging. 2.5 amp battery goes forever on these drills. This drill here is pretty standard. If you've got the 18 volt version of the Makita impact driver, the latest one, like you can't tell the difference when you're looking at them. They're very, very similar. If you're wondering what this is, little bracket from Stealth Mounts, a company in the UK, really nice people. Got a little magnet holder there so you can put a drill bit on the side as well. And it screws right into the same hole that you put your belt hook in. So in terms of use, I use this stuff the most, the drills and the circular saw. We'll talk more about that in a minute though. Let's look at some of the other tools. We're kind of getting into the area of tools that I don't use as much, but when I use them, like this one here, this is the best reciprocating saw I've had. It has a rafter hook on it, which is super handy for a reciprocating saw, because when you're doing demolition, you're often on big ladders or scaffolds and you're up high cutting rafters, and we've renovated 3 or 4 houses since I got it. It's still going strong. Highly recommend. This is the hammer drill, the SDS hammer drill. Very wee one, very small one. I've done a few Dynabolts with it. I tried the dust extraction. It also has the chip on it. And I tried it with that Milwaukee sleeve thing that goes over the drill bit and put the port in, and it worked really well. I haven't used this hammer drill very often, but it's nice to know that it's there when I need it. They seem to focus a lot more on vibration technology. See that? That is super helpful and super important with these kind of tools. Hammering into concrete, it's not good for your body. So you can probably tell so far that I'm a fan of Makita 40 volt tools, including this one right here. Before we got our heat pump, this was very useful. Now it sits in a cupboard. Rotate. The only thing we currently use it for is blowing smoke out of the window when we're cooking, because we don't have an extractor fan. I hope you heard me there. This is something that I was quite surprised by actually. Makita aren't really known for their nail guns. They certainly don't have a framing nail gun in the 40 volt system, and I was surprised that they released this along with a 18 volt that is identical. And it works really well. It's a straight bratter. It's 18 gauge, this particular one. With the 2.5 amp battery, it's nicely weighted. It's got the belt hook like the drills. All those things are great. The limitations, it's got a little rubber thing on it that falls off all the time. I don't even know what happened to my one. I'm gonna lose that. The big issue with this one, and why I don't use it as often as you think I would, is it has a depth limit, 40 mil. I often need to shoot nails at a 45 mil. More often than not, I'll use my 18 gauge Milwaukee nailer. But if you want just one bratter and you're on Makita 40 volt, this isn't a bad one. You just got to know about that depth limit. That's the bratter. Alright, now this is the newest Makita 40V tool I have, and the craziest looking. I've never had a tool like this before. This is a gigantic drill, but it's for drilling into the ground. So you can put a 200mm up to 200mm diameter auger bit in there. You put that against your hip, preferably when you're not wearing a tool belt. Hand there, hand there. Right, let's get the battery on it. Something tells me this is going to be a 8 amp hour battery tool. We're going to find out very soon, because I'm going to use this on the deck in the next exciting episode. The way it works with Makita is I reach out to them when I've seen a tool that I think will help my work. I hit them up and ask them if they have any and would they be keen to supply me with it. And that's sort of how we've been working with them for the last 3 years. So I don't have all the Makita 40V tools by any stretch. I have a decent amount, but the ones that I have are ones that I thought I'd be using quite a bit. But yeah, I'm very aware of how lucky I am to be given these tools. Obviously I've built this channel up to the point that it's at, and that's why it happens. You know, it's more about the channel than it is about me. But that's the key, it has to fit my work and fit what I do. And I think out of all these tools, it's pretty much, yeah, I need all of them. I need them all. The vacuum! I've got an issue with cordless vacuums. Alright, let's look into it a bit more. If a tool creates dust and you can attach a vacuum to it, you totally should. That's what I think. But more often than not, I'll reach over to my corded vacuum, my Festool corded vacuum, than I will my cordless vacuums. And that hasn't changed with this Makita 40V. I've got the 36V, 2x 18V Makita. This one here, kind of slightly smaller. And it's quite different in that it has two 18V batteries that go in there. My issue with that smaller one there was always, A, it needed 2 batteries, so that means you need 4. B, the suction power was terrible. It would not, you know, clean things very well at all. So I just used the Festool when I needed to do proper cleaning. So when I was looking at the specs for the big one that can run off 1 battery, and it said it had twice the suction power of the other one, I was like, brilliant. It takes 2 batteries, but it only uses 1 at a time. This is a 4 amp battery here. I'd be lucky to get 20 minutes out of this, I reckon. If I've cleaned up this whole garage and cleaned up that, I'd probably burn through the battery quite easily. So when I have it hooked up to a drop saw, I'm changing batteries all the time. Now my other issue with these cordless vacuums is this. You pull that out, and then you pull the filter and everything out. There's very little space for dust. Look at that, the filter and housing, all this stuff here is taking up all this space. They've changed the filter, but you still got this, albeit it's a lot smaller. So you can get a bit more capacity in there. And then you've got this plastic issue that you have to peel under there on both sides, release it, and then when you're loading up a bag, you have to put it back under there. But, I mean, look. Not ideal. Similar, you pull the top half of the vacuum off, and there's the vacuum bag all contained. You can even get a little latch here like this and cover that. Lift that up, and then you got all your dust there. Yay! Now the elephant in the room there with Festool is you're paying more for a Festool vacuum, and those bags are expensive. They're probably work out to be about $15 each bag. They've got a long life bag which is around about $350, but those things, they annoy me a little bit. You've either got the small Makita 2x 18V where you need heaps of batteries and the suction power is not very good, or you get the big one where the suction power is great but you also need heaps of batteries because you burn through them when you use it. So I mentioned stealth mounts earlier, that drill holder thingy. They also make battery holders. That's their main kind of thing. And you can just screw them to the wall like this and it holds all your batteries. Super handy. So I've got the 40V system and I've still got the 18V system. But now that it's been 2 years, there's still a lot of tools that I use from 18V. And before we talk about that, before we talk about Squarespace, check this out. Can you see that? That is our deck design, our final deck design. And that main seating area is here. It's changed quite a lot since our original rough designs. And that's thanks to you guys. We got a lot of input in the last episode about the deck design, and we've incorporated a lot of the things and a lot of the good points that people made, so stay tuned for that. And by the way, buying materials for this deck, very expensive. I'll tell you exactly how much once I've got them all and we're building the deck, but you've probably gathered how we are paying for those decking materials, and that's with today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for you to build your online presence and run your business. Jess and I are big fans of Squarespace. We built our website with Squarespace. We always recommend it to people who ask, and that's because they make it easy. They make it easy with their portfolios and galleries. The fact that you don't need to know how to code, you can drag and drop all your image files. You can type in titles, all images automatically scale to fit so it looks good on all devices. They even have a video building platform now. You can also get your own custom domain name through Squarespace. They have it all, anything you need to build a website, and they also offer a free trial. And then once you're ready to launch your own website, head to squarespace.com/Scott Brown Carpentry to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Alright, let's get back to the 40 volt tools. So if you have the 18 volt system and you're wondering whether it's worth switching over to 40 volt, here are some of the tools that I still use that are 18 volt. The planer. I bought this planer years ago. It's still great. I still use the 18 volt router. They've got a 40 volt planer, they've got a 40 volt router, but I don't see any limitations with these ones, so happy to keep using them. I still use this oil impulse 18 volt drill, partly because they don't have a 40 volt one yet, and partly because it still works fine when you want to drill a little quieter than a regular impact driver. I still use the sander. I'm not actually sure if they have a 40 volt sander. Do they have a 40 volt sander? Anti-vibration technology would be the main improvement I would ask for this. After using this for a while, you feel a little rattle in your blood. And I still, of course, use the 18 volt multi-tool. This is my favorite multi-tool. This has anti-vibration technology, which is really good. And also it's an example of what Makita said when they came out with a 40 volt system, which was they're going to keep the 18 volt system going. This came out after the 40 volt system, so there you go. Oh yeah, I still use the blower. Still use this all the time. So yeah, it's been 2 years. I still use some 18 volt tools. I'm very happy with the 40 volt tools that I do have. The biggest benefits that I've had has been the drop saw and the circular saws. That drop saw, one battery, use it all day, super efficient. The circular saws are super efficient with the battery as well. Unless it's about to die, it never has any limitations. I can rip timber easily. Honestly, it's just good to have all your tools on one battery, generally. So having the drills in the same platform is good, but not necessary. The way I use drills and impact drivers, I could easily keep using my 18 volts with no issue. So yeah, 2 years with the Makita 40 volt system. That's what I think of it, but I'm interested to hear what you think of the 40 volt system. Have you used it before? Are you a fan of it? Are you staying away from it for a particular reason? Do you not even care about cordless tools at all? Let me know in the comments below. And subscribe, because I'm going to be using this auger bit thingy soon. Imagine a battery drill that can put this into the ground. That will be in the next exciting episode.